Hi, I'm Sam Sells, and welcome to my podcast, Clean Money. I'm a serial entrepreneur that has led over 2 billion development projects around the world. But the work I am most proud of is the work we do here at Wild Mountain Capital. We not only create great returns for our socially conscious investors, but we make an impact in the many communities we work in and we change lives. I like to say investing matters, and my show is to talk with everyday folks that are not only creating great success, but making an impact in society and improving the lives of others. That is my mission, and I want to share my stories and others with you. Welcome to Clean Money. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another great episode of the Clean Money Podcast, where we talk about our use of resources to make a difference in the world. My guest today is Dr. Amir Baluch, who is a wealth strategist, private fund manager, and international best-selling author. As founder of Baluch Capital Partners and host of Financial Wellness MD, Dr. Baluch helps professionals achieve financial independence through strategic passive investments. With over a decade of experience in private equity, he has overseen over $700 million in projects. He also is the author of Make It, Keep It, and The Prosperity Prescription. He's also a Forbes contributor. Dr. Baluch's insights are especially valuable for healthcare professionals seeking financial freedom and work-life balance. Dr. Baluch, thank you so much for joining the pod today.
Hey, yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, clearly an MD. Tell us a little bit about yourself outside of that.
Well, I didn't start off with an MD. I applied to medical school, and unlike most doctors, I didn't get in the first time I applied. So I was a personal trainer, I was a nutritionist, I was a librarian, I was an EMT. I did a bunch of things before I actually got in, and that's actually what led me to get to where I am now. Is because through all these failures, I learned a lot. Failing getting into medical school, I learned I can't trust one source of income. I tried my hand in business. I had electronic payments business when I was 21. This was in the year 2000, by the way. Lost my life savings there, which wasn't a lot. It was 40 grand, but when you're 21, that's a lot.
Yep.
And then moved in with my parents, but they went bankrupt within a few months, actually, from poor financial planning and lack of diversity and maybe some over leveraging into some deals. So we had to move to one bedroom apartment, $250 a month, and really sucked. And it kind of got me thinking, hey, how could this have been prevented? And I think a lot of it is just education, which is, why I like these types of podcasts, like what you're doing is such a great benefit to people. We didn't have podcasts back then.
Yeah.
It was kind of you didn't have access to mentors or anything. But that's the main reason I started learning about personal finance and got really involved so much that when I finished my anesthesia residency in 2010 and moved to Dallas, within a year, I got my securities license and joined a boutique investment bank. And I did that for about half a decade. That's when we went through most of the hundreds of millions of transactions there at a very high level. And so it's almost like doing another residency. So I had to learn, finance and due diligence and, best practices for different asset classes. Mainly, we were doing real estate, like multifamily, hard money lending, and we had a fix and flip operation that was pretty big. So a little bit of private equity. I went off on my own in 2016 and grew Baluch Capital into what it is now, which is basically a multi-asset platform of non-correlated investments. So it's like going to Baskin Robbins and you can choose kind of what flavors you want in your portfolio. That's how I like to think about it. And so here we are.
Oh, it's super interesting. And you graduate medical school and you're thinking you don't like medicine. I mean, I worked in healthcare for a while. I'm happily not in healthcare anymore, but um, yeah, tell me a little bit about that transition, if you would.
Well, actually, I love being an anesthesiologist. And even when I retired temporarily in 2023, I ended up coming back to do some more, like, 4 or 6 days a month, plus or minus, to keep up the skill set. I never wanted to leave it, actually, but just, uh, one, you can only grow so much as a doctor. And two, I had to put in more effort into all these other companies that were growing, our real estate development company, our wealth strategy company. We have an e-commerce company too. So it was just taking up so much of my time. I needed those days off. And so at some point I couldn't take any more days off because you had to, you know, work a
Yeah.
certain amount to be kind of
Right.
employed, right? So I pulled out for a little bit until I could find a PRN type of a gig, which is where I am now.
Oh, nice.
But I will
Right.
tell you that story is not the same for a lot of doctors. I think just from talking to a lot of doctors now, probably 70% of them are getting burnt out and reimbursement keeps going lower, but which means you have to see more volume of patients, which means more hours and less quality time with the patient, which makes the job not as fun. So, especially in the primary care world or anything that has a clinic involved to it, that's been the case. So, another reason I do all this is I feel if every doctor could just even get, five, $10,000 passive income a month, just some baby step goals. Not don't even think about retirement yet, but get that goal and go down to 4 days a week instead of five, or 5 days instead of six,
Yeah.
depending on what the schedule's like. That could really make a big difference in somebody's life, and it goes for anybody, not just physicians. Just anybody can go down to 4 days a week. They'll feel a lot better about their job and like it more and feel more relaxed.
I agree. It's amazing what happens when you start creating passive income and it just like it takes the stress off or like a lot of the stress off your life when you know you have a safety net there to fall back on.
Yeah.
So, what are you focused on right now?
Well, on the three main categories that we work in is real estate, private equity, and private credit. On the real estate, we work a lot in the build to rent single family development. So we're developers. We'll develop the land and we'll also build the vertical housing. And most of the time we sell them. Sometimes we'll keep them and rent them out, just depending on the deal, if it's an opportunity zone or not, and the tax situation at the time. Private equity, which means just investing in private businesses, I mainly stay focused in e-commerce and life sciences like biotech. And that's been really hot right now with, we've got a cancer company that's on fire. We might be doing a pipe uh, into a regenerative medicine platform and some other things that are cool too. Remote patient monitoring is really hot. Things that really are changing people's lives on a daily basis and actually even cutting down the cost of healthcare in America, which is a big issue right now. So I say most of my focus are on those two things right now.
Can you tell us what that means? You said pipe. What do you mean by that?
So a pipe is people like Warren Buffett will invest through a pipe, which stands for private investment into a public entity. So not to bash Warren Buffett or anything, but is he the smartest investor? I don't know. If you have enough money to invest, you could negotiate directly with a publicly traded company and invest privately and have different terms. You can get warrants, you could get, which is like an option to buy at a future price if the stock goes the right direction. You get preferred shares, you could get a board seat. So all these things can happen. And so, if you set up the terms right, you actually make more money with less risk. But it's not easy to do because publicly traded companies are usually pretty large market cap, so you can't come with 100 grand to negotiate something like that. But you're really bringing a lot of volume of capital, or maybe if you come in as a strategic partner, and sometimes I can do that by creating a medical advisory board and bringing that to a company that needs it, plus over $10 million or something like that. Then you can do these types of special investments.
So you're raising $10 million from physicians or whoever your investors are. You're putting together an advisory board and you're coming into a public entity and saying, hey, we're going to come in with $10 million and all of these people who can help you grow. Is that right?
Right, right. You can do that.
In exchange for a favorable, I don't
Some
know.
more favorable economics or
Yeah.
terms. Like, for example, let's say just an example of if you're with Berkshire Hathaway and you got $1 billion to spend, you could go to a company and say, hey, instead of common stock, I'd like to get a board seat and preferred shares, and maybe I get some warrants. And let's say the stock is $100 a share, and your warrants can be executed at 110. So that means in the future, if the stock goes to 120, you can buy shares still at $110. So you're immediately making more money with very little risk. Or sometimes what people do is, let's say if the stock doubles in price, you could sell it and now you have all your money back, but you still keep the warrants and you have a free ride on future growth. So if the company still goes in the right direction, now you execute on your warrants and you're just basically getting free money with no risk at that point. So there's a couple ways to negotiate during the pipe.
Interesting. Super interesting. So what can you tell me about what it is you're investing in? Is that something you can disclose or?
Uh, well, a lot of people know that there's a lot of companies out there that are into regenerative medicine. So I don't know if anybody's knows a lot about what stem cells are, but these are the cells, like stem cells from a placenta or from an embryo. These individual cells don't know what they want to be when they grow up. They could grow into anything. So basically, every one of our cells, hair, skin, it came from a stem cell eventually before it differentiated into what it is today. So in other countries, not as much in the US because of FDA regulations and probably big pharma curtailing development in this direction. But if you have stem cell treatments, people are doing IV infusions and injections of stem cells to regenerate damaged tissue. There was a big trial where if somebody had a heart attack, they would infuse stem cells and their heart would recover a lot faster because even though the heart is dying from the heart attack, it was actively regenerating new cardiac tissue like on the spot. So this helps with arthritis, Crohn's disease, a lot of anti-inflammatory things, Alzheimer's, dementia, and they're doing it on a small scale in other countries. But if America becomes more open to it, this is going to be game changing. So we are looking into uh, private and public companies that are involved in that, as we see that as being the future of healthcare. And we really need something to bring down the cost of healthcare. Those
Yeah.
people just want to keep spending, I don't know what it is for a family, $1,500 a month just for health insurance. It's not that
Yeah.
affordable for, the average American. So it's a big problem. And it's good to, do something where you can make money in life sciences and you're really helping the whole nation as you develop new technologies to help people with their everyday health.
Who who do you approach with your investment opportunities and how do you approach them?
Well, it started off with just friends and family, and people saw that what I was doing in real estate, and they just kind of wanted to partner up with me. And then word got out, and more people wanted to join, and so I had to put together bigger deals. And now, we've got the attention of a few seven-figure check writers and some hedge funds and things like that, private equity funds that want in on our deal flow, and also our expertise in life sciences
Hmm.
and sometimes our expertise in real estate as well, since we have 14 years experience in building in Dallas, Fort Worth specifically. So, just over time, as you get a bigger track record, starts to attract more capital and bigger checks. So it's kind of gone from just friends and family to not, I don't know if we're ready for institutional money yet, but definitely high net worth and family office money, and a few smaller private funds are looking to work with us right now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I know um, my team has helped probably place $1 billion worth of institutional and JV capital with good operators, and it's a different machine to operate at that level. It's a different we've worked with institutions and they expect different things, and They want a long time, they want a track record. It doesn't have to be a perfect track record. They just need a track record and they want to know like when you messed up, how did you overcome that? And what did you do right? Because if you like if you've been in real estate for decades, something's going to go awry because it's real estate and there's just way too many gremlins in those buildings. But um, it's pretty powerful stuff what happens when you can pull together capital and go do something pretty unique. For me, it's affordable housing. For you, if you're doing real estate or if you're doing ground up or working with regenerative sciences, and helping further that machine to reduce the cost of medical care across the country. That's powerful.
Very cool stuff. The one company I could talk about, which actually everybody on the podcast can get the benefit of, if you one company that we funded is called Cancer Check Labs. You just go to cancerchecklabs.com. It's the only blood test that could screen for over 200 cancers with one blood draw.
Wow.
And it's not an extrapolation of DNA with some AI and something in a black box. Like they get enough cells from the blood draw, you could put that on a microscope slide, and a pathologist can make a diagnosis with the cells, which is the gold standard for diagnosis. So, because first, before a tumor grows, it has to, usually cancer starts in one place, but it's not going to really kill you until it goes into the blood and goes to some place that's not. Like you don't want breast tissue growing in your brain. That's what will kill you. So, but
Yeah.
we're able to catch that at even at stage zero in a cancer. So that's, imagine early diagnosis, how many diseases you would prevent. And if you're preventing these diseases, which, chemo and all that costs a lot of money and surgery costs a lot of money, by preventing those big expenditures, you're really reducing the cost. And you also get some peace of mind that, you're not getting an early cancer. Almost everybody knows somebody that died a little bit too early from cancer. I know a few people, even in their early 40s, had a metastatic colon cancer even. So
Yeah.
that's something anybody can benefit from if they want to see the power of what life sciences can do.
And you invested in that firm and helped them grow?
Yeah, yeah. We got a double-digit multiple on that one in about 2 years.
That's fantastic. I, there's so many ways to invest and make a difference in the world. It's not just through affordable housing. It's not just, um, it's just not one thing or the other. There's so many ways to make a difference. And for those of you who are listening, you may be thinking like, Amir, I can invest in that way. So let me just ask you, Amir, what are your requirements for investors who would be interested in taking on something different?
Well, for the most part, they had to be qualified clients or accredited investors. So qualified client means net worth 2.2 million and up. And then accredited investor is either 200 or 300 grand a year, depending on if you're married or not, in cash flow or $1 million net worth. Also, we've done joint ventures on smaller real estate deals, like maybe if we're just doing $1 million raise, like we did last week, or a small development in Highland Park, Dallas. So that one we just had, 4 or 5 people came together and we did a joint venture, which is not a securities. It's not a securities. You don't have to accept a credit investor. It just happened that everybody was accredited anyway, but you don't have to. So sometimes we've done joint ventures with non-accredited investors, but that's usually pretty rare. And we also like to work with people that we just like working with. So, there's sometimes just the personality of the people was just not right fit for our community, and I just gave them their money back. So just uh, it's every once in a while we're going to get together for dinner and talk about progress on our projects and things like that. And if there's not a good fit for the culture of our community, we just don't deal with it. So luckily that doesn't happen very often, but it does
I will
it
tell you
does
one of
happen.
my first mistakes I made was taking money from folks that I thought were friends, but within a few weeks they were freaking out about the investment and everything, and it just turned out to be not a good fit. And so, not all money, as they say, all money is green. I disagree. Some money is just not worth taking because real estate is not a slam dunk deal. Investments are not a slam dunk deal. We
Yeah.
sometimes think they are, but they're not. And there's always risk involved, and you roll with the punches and you
Yeah.
do the best you can. But
Yeah, there's almost risk. There's risk in everything you do. Even not investing is risk because now you're going to lose money to inflation. And a CD is very, very, very low risk, but usually doesn't beat inflation, which means you're losing. So,
right,
or you could take a chance at the stock market and maybe in one day $1 trillion gets wiped out by, a deep seek.
yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
choose what level of risk you're going to do, but whether you like it or not, whether you make a decision to invest in something or not, there's going to be some risk one way or another. So, that's why it's important to listen to podcasts like this and understand which risk you want to take and how you want to diversify your portfolio.
So tell me about the risk of, if you're investing in a pipe, right? So um, private investment into a public entity. What kind of risk are involved with that? Because I imagine most people are unfamiliar with that.
Yeah, so just in general, I just think, okay, we're investing in a business, whether it's a private company or a public one. If you're going to invest into a public company, but you're doing it through a pipe, you're going to get favorable terms. So now you're basically can be in the public stock market, but you're not taking as much risk. Or if there's upside, you could double down on the upside depending on what you negotiate. And sometimes you even have a little bit of control of that company, like Warren Buffett will sit on the board of some of these companies. Then you have a vote as to what direction the company should go. So the benefit of that is you're decreasing the risk, but still any business has a risk. Like for example, these new legislative changes might be wiping out whole industries, right? So, what if somebody's biggest business is bringing in products from China and now we're putting 10% tariffs on them, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, that could wipe out a whole company almost overnight with the stroke of a pen. So you always have those type of legislative risks. There's always just market risks in general when the sentiment is going up and down. Usually that's driven by sentiment. There's logistical risk and execution. There's management risk. Are the managers actually making the right decisions for the company to be competitive? Because it's very competitive out there. And usually these private placement memorandums have maybe about 200 pages just in the risk disclosures, right? So they write down anything bad that can happen, they're going to write it in there because anything can happen. And sometimes things happen in the good direction. Maybe a piece of legislation goes your direction and now the whole market is open, which is another reason we're looking into regenerative therapy because we think right now with current legislation is going to be more favorable to cellular therapies and regenerative therapy. So those are some of the risks you could get in any business and even real estate, like what you're talking about, affordable homes, which we love that because we build affordable homes here in Dallas too.
Mhm.
What is the risk there? There's interest rate risks. If you're doing commercial, if it goes up, your value goes down because it's based off of a cap rate. We build single family, so we're not as hurt by changes in interest rate, but it can delay days on market, and which means we're increasing how much we're paying to the bank before we actually sell and get our money. And then what if you hire the wrong managers? Almost everybody knows somebody who had a contractor that maybe ran off with the money, right? Or
Yep.
maybe they put in the windows upside down. You got to fix it and spend more money. That's going to come out of the profit. So, or supply and demand is in every business, right? It doesn't matter what you're in. If you got an apartment complex on one side of the road and somebody's going to build one right across the street from you, like you're basically splitting the market. You've doubled the supply, even though the demand is the same. So all these things you got to look at and just understand, you know, you can lose money or maybe not make as much as what is on projections. And if all those things go in your favor, which sometimes they do, then you could actually make more money than that. So you just have to be pretty comfortable with that. And I tell investors just don't get so emotionally attached to money. Usually if you're investing at this level, a credit investor and up, you have enough money to pay the bills and the mortgage. You're really just building money for, your legacy and your kids. And you don't want them to have too much money anyway and be spoiled. So it's okay if you get a couple losses every now and then, but you're trying to be emotionally detached from it because you're going to make better decisions. And, if you focus on a goal of just always adding value and working with people that you like, and you're going to win more than you lose, then it can be an enjoyable process to be a limited partner.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you have the wrong mindset when it comes to investing, I mean, even if a deal goes well, you might be so stressed out, maybe it wasn't worth it. So,
It's amazing when you really think about all the things that could go wrong. Like you said, 100 pages in the PPM, the private placement memorandum, disclosing all the things that could go wrong. Of those 100 things that could go wrong, probably 99% of those have nothing to do with the operator or the person in charge. Like, I have
right.
no control over the interest rates, none. You know, no control if a bank overextends itself and collapses, none. I had a friend uh, who had partnered with Lehman Brothers, and they did the equity in a project and were funding it. And he was building a high rise. And in 2008, Lehman Brothers went under, right? Guess who went bankrupt? My friend, right? And he lost all of his investors'
Uh,
money and everything else because he was attached to Lehman Brothers, not working for them, but did the deal with them. And talk about a stroke of bad luck. You know, um,
yeah,
you're
that's
you're
a tricky
you're
thing.
toast.
It's almost like losing is actually part of winning. So if you think you're going to win every time, then you haven't played the game long enough. So you're going to lose and you're going to learn from it and you're going to move on. As long as you win more than you lose, then you're going to be okay in the long run.
Absolutely. I, it's good to get those losses out early so you know how to protect yourself and prepare yourself to collect on the upside. Um, so tell me, you're still a physician. You work with a lot of physicians. You have this very unique take on investments. Like we can invest in a way that makes a difference to people's health. You're also doing affordable housing. I found that in general, not always. There's plenty of physicians and medical professionals who just want to make money and don't really care about anything else. But for the most part, physicians generally want to invest in a way that aligns with who they are, you know. And so you know, having gone to, I didn't go to medical school for medicine. I went to medical school to get my master's in health policy. And being around those physicians, they're there to, in generally, there to help people. They want to make a difference
Right.
and they want to make money in the process. And so, Amir, you're telling me about your journey. You've walked through a lot of the things that you've done, what you're currently working on. And I see that very much in what you're doing. Your investments are, you know, lucrative. They're focused on creating wealth, but they're also focused on making a difference in the world. And I,
Yeah, and actually, I don't know who said this, but people just focus on bringing value to the community. Money always follows that. So if you actually just focus on bringing value to the world and bring value to people around you, you never really have to worry about money in your bank account. So it's always going to be there. In fact, that's what money is used for. It's just an exchange of value. If you're providing more value than the person next to you, you're going to have more money. So
yeah,
if people just focus on the value and what other people need, then everything else financially is unlimited.
that's great. I have a mentor who tells me all the time, he's like, Sam, if you want more money, create more value.
Right.
Right? If you want more money, create more value.
That's
Um,
all it is.
that's all it is. That's all it is. So what's next for you? What are you focused on?
Well, I finally have brought investor relations on board this last week. So that's somebody who, for 200 hours a month can follow up with all all the people that want to invest with us, because a lot of times I don't have time for that. And, it's kind of unfortunate. Some people want to invest and I don't have time to talk to them all the time. So I think that's going to help a lot. And we built up our operations this year to probably quadruple our capacity for investors. So this is going to be, we're pretty much like at an inflection point right now. So where we have enough interest from big seven and even eight-figure check writers, and we have the track record, and we have the team that can actually communicate with them on a timely fashion. It can't just be me all the time. So that's kind of what we've been working on, is onboarding investor relations team and beefing up our underwriters. We've hired some people from BlackRock and JP Morgan now to help with underwriting both private equity and real estate. Never hurts to have a second set of eyes like that are
Yeah.
very focused on risk mitigation. And we beefed up our management team on the real estate. We've had, some of the top sellers from DR Horton, like over $22 billion in transactions, one of our partners, and one of the senior land developers with Toll Brothers. So bringing in some national managers on our investment committee just to make sure that we're in the right places at the right time.
That's fantastic. That's that's just wonderful. I in this when I was young, I had no idea that this world existed. When I was older, I had no idea that this world existed, right? You went from being a physician and doing small startup companies and trying different things to, learning how to do real estate and then learning how to raise capital and then learning how to get to these bigger and bigger things. And this is a world that most people have no idea about because it's not taught about in any school. Um, it's just not. And
You've got to almost learn it from the streets. It's almost like street knowledge. You just got to go out there and jump in it and then learn that way from
yeah,
people that are actually, turning the wheels and grinding every day.
absolutely. Absolutely. So we I think about this a lot and someday I would love to start an educational system that teaches people how to go through this whole process and even what it is if that's something that they want to do because it changes everything, right? You still get to be a physician, you still get to do that, but you'll make way more money in private equity than you will ever make in medicine. You'll create far more difference. Now, granted, I mean, you're touching people and helping them directly as a physician, but you will create far more value in the world by private equity and focus on funding companies that can go out and make a difference.
Right. Because those businesses are basically systems that can scale, whereas being a doctor, seeing one patient at a time is not that easy to scale that. So, that's why the richest people in the world have businesses. So that's
Yeah.
where most of the wealth is made in the world, actually, even more so than even real estate. So you
Hmm.
look at, Amazon and Facebook, and these are all companies and mainly in the tech space, but even non-tech companies are in the billions of dollars, right? They have those
Yeah.
out there, but you don't see a medical practice that's $1 billion usually.
Nope. It's only when real estate becomes a business and when it becomes a big business, like in a fund or something like that, that it becomes very, very valuable.
Right.
That's incredible. So, if someone's been listening today and they wanted to reach out and get to know you a little bit more, Amir, how could they do that?
Well, the easiest thing is they could check us out on our website. If they want to scan this QR code above my head, they could do that. I think I'm the only Amir Baluch on LinkedIn, at least the only one that's a doctor, I think. I'm pretty sure. And also, somewhere in here around this video, we'll have a link to some bonuses. If people want to get a free copy of my book, they can do that, which has my contact information in it. And also a link if somebody wants to do a 10-minute clarity call with me. I call it a clarity call because there's so much information and sometimes noise on the internet. You don't know what you need to do. So, but I talked to so many people, if somebody tells me their situation in 3 to 5 minutes, I can kind of either share some resources that I have or get them unstuck or let them know what the next best thing to do is, whether that's working with me or not, or maybe getting a financial planner or cutting down on taxes, whatever it is, the next best step that I think is for them. I don't mind helping them with that.
Fantastic. We'll make sure all of those resources are in the show notes so people can click and get access to your book. Check you out on LinkedIn, Dr. Amir Baluch, or jump on a clarity call. Why not? Like that's 10 minutes. Like if you're listening to this and you're thinking, this is pretty interesting because it is super interesting, then hop on the call with Amir and just be like, hey, 10 minutes, tell me, am I a good fit? Am I not a good fit? What would you suggest?
Yeah. And I always learn from other people too, which is why I offer that. I could learn from somebody else's perspective as well. So it's a good thing to do.
Dr. Amir, thank you so much for being on the pod with me today. Is there any last thing you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, if people are listening to this podcast, you're trying to learn or polish some of your knowledge off or your skill sets, or maybe ready to take action. But once you get past the knowledge, you probably should take action, or else there's kind of a waste of knowledge. And it's good to not only learn from podcasts like this, but get into some communities where you could express your ideas without fear of being judged. And that's what I do. That's what Sam does. Just talk to us about what questions you are, because a lot of times people don't take action because they've got something kind of stuck in their mind that's preventing them from taking the next step. And you just got to talk that out with somebody without fear of judgment. And so, try to make that happen for you if you're in that position.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. No judgment here. Like when you've been through it all, you're willing to help out others to go through the same process. And
Right.
just to what you said earlier, so many docs burning themselves out. Just create some passive income and give yourself some space in life.
Yep. Just one day a week will do wonders.
Wonders. Wonders. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Baluch, for joining us. And I can't wait to see what all you do in this world.
That's good. Thanks for having this conversation with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for tuning in to Clean Money, where we talk about sustainable investing that improves society. We are passionate about creating great investment returns to investors who want to use their money to make a positive social impact in the world. If you enjoyed the episode, we'd appreciate a 5-star review. And if you are interested in making your investing matter, please connect with us at wildmountaincapital.com, or you can find me, Samuel Sells, on LinkedIn, on Twitter at Sells_Samuel, on Instagram at CleanMoneySam, or on Facebook. And finally, make your investing matter.